Call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, February 15th. It is 11:45 a.m. All council members are present. Town manager, town attorney, town clerk. We are at the Bay Oaks Recreation Center. If you'll please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have public comment. Is there anyone here that, yes, sir, come on up.
Jim Bowen, 21067 St. Peters. The town has many important pending decisions. Filling the town council vacancy seems to have become a distraction. The focus needs to be rebuilding our island. To move forward, the town needs a unified council. For that reason, I'm withdrawing my name for consideration. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? Seeing none, anyone? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Administrative agenda, town council vacancy. I think we kind of,
I can tee it up for you.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So the one agenda item before you today is the requested motion would be the appointment of an individual to fill the vacant seat that currently exists on the town council. As you are aware, Bill Veach, he resigned from the town council back in December. Thereafter, on January the 8th, the town council acknowledged the vacancy and solicited applications from qualified individuals to serve. There were five applications received. We currently have one that is coming off, right? A copy of that, there was a copy of all the applications in your packet. So the authority that we need to rely upon in order to fill this vacancy is found in Chapter 4, Section 4.08 of the Town Charter. And what that provides is that a vacancy on the council, except for the position of the mayor, will be filled by appointment by a majority vote of the council members remaining, and said appointment would be effective until a successor is chosen at the next regular election. So at your last meeting, there were several attempts to obtain that majority vote, which were unsuccessful. And for that reason, today's meeting was called as a special meeting in order to see if we're able to fill that appointment. In the interim, Councilmember John King, sorry, it was a senior moment. Councilmember King asked a very good question regarding whether or not there would be any impact on the town's budgetary process. And I was able to do some research on that, and I did work with our finance director, and there could be an impact on your budgetary process. And that impact would be in the event that there was a determination to exceed the rollback rate greater than 110%, that would require a unanimous vote of the town council's seats. And we have 5 seats. So if you have one that is vacant, you would not have that option to exceed that rollback amount. What will be the rollback rate for the coming budgetary cycle? We do not know that information yet until June. The other information that I was able to share with you is that currently in the Florida legislature, there is some pending litigation. There is a bill that's been filed in the Senate as well as in the House. This talks about increasing the previous millage rate, requiring a vote of at least 2/3 of the membership. So 2/3 of your membership would basically be 4 people, which you could, depending on how that legislation gets finalized, they could change it to be a unanimous position, at which point you would not have the 5. Or they could do nothing. So that's still kind of an unknown. So you, as far as the budgetary process, you have 2 unknowns to be aware of. One is you don't know what the property appraiser is going to give you as a value, and you don't know if there's going to be a legislative change. With that background, I would then defer to our finance director if he wants to. He's passed out a example of the millage rate calculations based on the 2023 millage rate forms, which you should have in front of you. And it's a very clear, I think, example of how the number of votes coincide with whatever change you make to the rollback. And so you'll see the number of votes required on the left-hand side with the percentage of the rollback on the very right-hand side. So I'll defer to Joe. I need that energy drink.
Hey, Joe.
Good morning. Joe Onzik, Director of Finance. I put together this example. What attached to it are the forms that kind of come along and what dictate these calculations. So at first I was just going to pass those out, but they're so confusing to look at. I thought it would be easier to just present a simple example for you. So just to illustrate and put this into perspective. So the top section is the calculation of the rollback rate. And so how that's determined is the prior year property tax revenue is used. So that's our starting point. And then it's divided by the newly appraised value of property, but that's before additions and deletions. And then you divide that by 1,000 and you get the rollback rate. So using the same information that was used last year, the rollback rate was calculated at 0.8290. The millage rate that we had in effect the previous year was 0.99. And there was a desire to maintain that millage rate at 0.99. And so that's where this comparison then comes into effect, where we're now comparing that desired or proposed millage rate of 0.99, and just to keep it the same, it's now getting compared based on these official documents that are turned into the tax appraiser. It's being compared to that rollback rate of 0.8290%. Or, I'm sorry, not percent, just 0.8290. According to the requirements for the number of votes that are required to increase it above that rollback rate, a majority vote is required to increase it just enough to capture the per capita Florida personal income, the change in personal income. And based on last year, that would have allowed us to raise it from 0.829 to 0.8525. That increase would have required a majority vote, which at that point would be three members. That would have increased our property tax revenue by $60,000. We were then also if we were to have a 2/3 vote maximum, the maximum millage rate required by a 2/3 vote of 4 members would be 0.9378. That would yield an overall increase of $220,194 over and above that $60,000. That's the limit. That's that 110% limit that we're reaching there that would be allowed by 4 members. But to get all the way up to that 0.99%, we would require a unanimous vote, which would mean 5 votes, and that is what would bring us up an additional $134,000. So that is what we would be, I guess, at risk
if you wanted to rank each of the remaining 4 applicants and then have a composite vote as to which of the 4 got the lowest number, with one being the preferred candidate or individual. Or there could simply just be a motion made, and if there's a majority in support of the motion, if it's seconded and then a majority, then that would satisfy your charter requirement.
Nancy, if this is a situation where the position wouldn't remain filled, would that be something the governor could weigh in on and fill that position, or is that off the table?
It's really not an option that you have available to you, and the reason for it, or the authority for that, is your charter. Your charter says that the governor could appoint an interim council, and that would be if there were multiple vacancies on council such that there was not a majority of members present.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Joe. I think if everyone else is comfortable with this, to try to get it potentially done 1, not 3 tries. If everyone is comfortable with just explaining who their selection is, why they're selecting them, and then we can get a motion. Is everybody okay with that, or would you rather do a ballot? And I have no problem with discussing, but I'll leave it to the will of the council. You look like you're leaning in, Karen.
Just fine. I mean, I have no problem discussing it. I think maybe to take a vote first and see where we're at, because that could be the
certain.
deciding factor. And then if it's not, then we go into discussion mode.
I'm okay with either way. What say you, Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Well, I want to comment, because I've heard some concern that we didn't have discussion last time. And let me tell you why I was comfortable with that. We had and have 5 outstanding candidates, all of whom could step in tomorrow and serve this town honorably. And I'm so proud and thankful for the men and women who stepped up, Barbara, Jim, Ed, Sal, and Scott, because it's a heavy lift, and I think they're all eminently qualified. And one of the concerns I had about having a debate about it, when you talk about someone, you're in essence being critical of the other 4, or you're making inferences that could be misconstrued. I think all 5 of these people are spectacular. I think what Jim just said today is demonstrative of his class and grace, and I think all these candidates exhibit that. And so that's why I was comfortable not having a debate, because I don't want to diminish any of these candidates, because I think they're all outstanding. But that being said, I don't like, for that reason, I don't like the ranking concept, because I think all 5 of them are outstanding. I have no problem having a conversation about it and utilizing the procedure that you've suggested, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Counselor King?
I guess I was pretty adamant of where I was in my position, but obviously things have changed and we need to move forward and we have to do something, and I'm ready and willing to do that now.
So would you like to just take the vote, or would you like to?
I'm okay with taking a vote.
Okay.
And if you want to discuss it later, I'm happy to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, you okay, Vice Mayor, we'll take the vote then?
That's fine.
I mean, we're split again, 2 and 2.
No, that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
By ballot.
By ballot, yeah. Not the ranking, just the select your choice. And then, if everyone's okay, if you want to say something after the vote, if a vote goes through, then we could say a few words, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. Okay.
Okay, the first,
First one is for Scott Safford. Scott Safford. Scott Safford.
Make your decision.
And Scott Safford.
There you have it.
so for purposes of the record, if there could be a motion made to be seconded and then voted officially.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to accept the nomination?
I move that we accept the results of the voting.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Counselor King, seconded by Counselor Woodson. Discussion. Vice Mayor Harold?
Well, I kind of just gave my discussion.
You did.
But having said that, I will explain my vote. Scott has served on the LPA for 8 years, I believe. I served with him for 2 of those years, so work with him closely. Everyone has suffered to varying degrees on this island post-Ian. Scott is in a relatively unique situation in that both his home and his business was impacted. And I think that gives him a unique perspective. Everybody on this list has suffered. But I think, again, that double hit that he took, I think it gives him a broad perspective. I've heard concerns about potential being a small business person on Fort Myers Beach, that's a potential conflict of interest. I would say that there are processes and procedures that work very well here for people to recuse themselves when they have a conflict. I would argue having that business background, that local business background on the island is an asset, not a detriment. And that's why I'm thrilled with all 5 of these candidates, but that's why in a very difficult decision, I selected Scott Safford.
Yeah, I don't know if I could have said it any better than what you said before the vote. I've felt it was important to have an LPA member that filled that seat for the remainder, simply for the fact that understanding the codes and understanding some of the challenges that we were facing before the storm and what we're facing now, just having that knowledge in the background was important. To your point, I think we were fortunate that we had 5 very good candidates that stepped up to the challenge, because it is a challenge. It is a big part of your life if you decide to do it. So to get 5 qualified people to do it, I thought was respectful. I thought it was a good showing of our community and how people want to be involved. I commend you, Jim, for what you did. You had my vote at the last one. You would have had my vote at this one had you stayed in. I've had conversations with the other members as to why I did that. I think Jim offered a lot of valuable insight as far as legal and financial background with municipalities. So therefore, that's why I felt you were the best choice. However, I talked with Scott yesterday about it. Being on the LPA is very important. Barbara having the background that she has on this island for so many years, as well as Ed, he's got a new vision, and all the other members had their own reasons. But for that reason is why I went with an LPA member. Jim gracefully backed out today, so Scott got my vote for that reason. Anyone else? Any further discussion? No?
I mean, I don't know that it requires any further discussion. I mean, Scott had my vote the first time around and the second time around, and one of my big things that I was concerned about was the possibility of running this fall. I don't think we had a majority of people that were willing to run this fall, or at least they're not willing yet, but maybe will change their mind. But certainly being on the LPA, as I was as well for 2 years before I came into this seat, it's critical. I mean, it is absolutely critical to know process, to know procedure, to know the codes, to know what's happening, and to have that skill level that you hit the ground running, or as running as you can possibly be, because it's still a learning curve being up here, even if you have that experience, but that puts you ahead of the game. So I'm happy with how we came to this conclusion, and welcome Scott on board.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
I would just like to weigh in too, if
Yes,
I
sir,
could.
go ahead.
I supported Ed, and I had my reasons for that. I liked all the candidates, honestly. I'm not trying to be a negative on any of them. Ed, I thought, aligned closer to what my feelings were, and for a selfish reason, he makes me seem verbose. So that's one of the reasons I backed him. But I had a concern about Scott's ability to have to recuse himself from things. Knowing, Mayor, that you've had to recuse yourself from other things, that was a concern of mine. I met with Scott and talked to Scott and don't have any further issues about it. So that's why I was comfortable moving forward. And I'll echo what Counselor Woodson said. Congratulations and welcome, Scott.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Now, congratulations, Scott. Or condolences.
Yeah.
With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Do we want to swear him in now or the next meeting?
Next meeting, right?
He'll need to resign from LPA first,
Okay,
Right.
and we can put it on Monday's meeting if that's the will of the council.
Tuesday's meeting.
Tuesday's meeting,
Tuesday.
if that's the will of the council also.
Just for the record, only because he needs to earn his stripes, do you have any, would you like an opportunity to speak, Scott?
Good, yeah, good point. Nice assist, Vice Mayor. Thank you. Yeah. Right, right.
Thank you for the record. New Councilman Scott Safford, thank you guys so much for your trust. I just want to tell a quick little story. Everybody wants to know what the qualifications are. You know, what you're applying for a job, what skills do you have to fulfill that job? But I actually have a little story. About 6 or 7 years ago, when I first got on the LPA, I think it was about 8 years ago, we were asked to go take a zoning class. And it was really interesting. And I actually went with Dan Hughes, who used to be the mayor. And I think Dan probably wrote the book that we studied. And I mean, he was amazing. And we're driving back from the class. And I looked over at him and I said, Dan, you've got places all over the world. You've done so many things. You've been mayor. Why are you on the LPA? And he said, Scott, I got the call to serve. Someday you may get that call. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. Well, I got the call. And it just dawned on me that that was one of the most impactful things. And Dan's been such a good mentor to me. And, you know, I'm going to do my absolute best to do a great job for the next 10 months. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. That was very well said about Dan Hughes. He was a mentor to many of us. When I went to, just to follow up on your story, when I decided I was going to run for council, the first person I sat down with was Dan Hughes, because I had to understand what it takes to do it. And he didn't, anybody that knew Dan, he didn't pull punches. He always made jokes, but they were very poignant jokes to what you were discussing. And because of his guidance and his wisdom is why I'm sitting up here today. So I can relate to your story. Any further?
Move to adjourn.
Got a motion by Counselor King,
Second?
seconded by Counselor Woodson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. We are adjourned at 12:09.